Yes, so I have two cats, which is really basically saying, nobody sleep with me. But I got them from, they were orphan kittens, and they had names already. It was Pilot and Jack. And my mom, who I love dearly, dearly, my mom doesn't have, she's not funny all the time, at least on purpose. And she was really good because she's like, you should call them Pilot and Hi Jack. Which is pretty good because my dad's a pilot as well, so how these things happen. It's so good to be here. I'm having lots of fun. I hope you are too. So I'm staying at the Hotel Arts, which is it's a great place, and we did the readings of the rooms today, and I got to tell people to go into, I got to read to them and say, go on that bed, put on this robe. I'm not really kind of like the dom always, so it was kind of exciting for me. I just needed a little whip, and I'd be like, do it. I would have channeled Sherry D, but anyways. But it occurred to me that because Hotel Arts, before it became like Hotel Arts, was a Holiday Inn, and I was thinking, think of all the people who were conceived there. And then my mind kept going, and I'm like, think of all the blowjobs. So I thought, I have to read this poem, because believe it or not, I have a blowjob poem. It's about Vancouver, but somehow I think it's universal. And this poem is called The Ghosts of Blowjobs Past. Maybe some of you felt that earlier in the hotel. Suppose you're invited to a Christmas party, and when you arrive at the condo lobby, something feels familiar, which is strange since it's not your kind of building, and you don't recall ever coming there before. Suppose on the flight up, it hits you that the building sits on land that once occupied one of your favorite nightclubs, Love Affair or Love My Hair, as you so affectionately called it. And even though the elevator plays Christmas carols, your head starts to fill with the thump, thump, thump of the club, along with the visions of your favorite bartenders, the punk rock cocktail waitresses, the woman with the long brown hair who you swear wore the same black dress as she danced on the speakers for a decade's worth of Tuesdays. All this and more comes to you as you exit the elevator, and just as you knock, knock, knock on the door, you're taken back to the moment a beautiful stranger pushed you into the stalls and gave you your first anonymous blowjob. And as the host opens the door, instead of saying hello, you say, someone gave me a blowjob here 20 years ago. This makes him a little uncomfortable, and you a lot ashamed. This isn't the first time ghosts have haunted you, as most of Vancouver feels like a graveyard of nightclubs past, and even by just walking around, you're bound to realize just how many of your pivotal moments have been cemented over like Jimmy Hoffa. Maybe it's just ego, not being able to let go of the geography, or your need for connection, a little bit of ownership in a city you'll never own. That can resonate in Calgary too, because a lot of the buildings disappear. Every time I come here, it's like that whole new block and that little Shoppers Drug Mart, who knew? All right, so I'm going to do something very strange. I don't think it's ever happened in the history of the Auburn. I'm going to read about blowjobs, cheeseburgers, and the Titanic. Because that's what poets do. So I'm going to read a few poems from Mick Poems. That's the cheeseburger part. Pickle Sundae. How can you refuse to make a sundae topped off with pickles when a customer explains this is how she'll tell her husband about her pregnancy? When she walks back to the table with a hot fudge sundae for him and a pickle sundae for her, he doesn't even notice at first, just stuffs his face with spoonful after spoonful until he sees the pickles in her ice cream, then hugs her so tightly you worry about the baby. I know you guys have an election on Monday, so this poem seemed appropriate somehow. It's called Little White Spoons. Rumor had it too many customers used little white spoons to snort cocaine, so head office discontinued them in favor of wooden stir sticks. Nobody could confirm this for sure, but on the day the ever-smiling mayor visits the drive-thru asking, "Whatever happened to those little white spoons?" you realize the rumors are true. Now, I just wanted to point out, because there's a certain Wild Rose Party candidate that may make you believe, or the spoon really believe, that because it's a white spoon, that it may have more luck or confidence or ability to function as a spoon. And I just want to reiterate the fact that that's so not the fucking case. Okay, now is the time for a big shift. So my new book, Impact the Titanic Poems. Hi, Internet. Or is that World Wide Web? I don't know, whatever these things. So this is all about the Titanic. So this is much more serious topic. And as I'm sure anyone who can see or hear or whatever has been bombarded with some Titanic stuff for the 100th anniversary. So you get a little bit more. And this first poem is called The Lost Worker. It's set in the Harland and Wolff shipyards in Belfast, Northern Ireland, where the Titanic was built. The Lost Worker. Whether the rumors resulted from the faint clangs or the faint clangs resulted from the rumors, even the oldest believe the possibility of a lost worker could only be an omen. No matter their sense of wonder, the pending deadlines, or their hurried pace, in the back of some workers' minds, the rivets sealed more than just the hull. At home, they hugged their children, kissed their wives, or dreamed of families they'd yet to realize. In the back of some workers' minds, the rivets sealed more than just the hull. So I think one of the reasons that so many folks remember the Titanic is there were so many nationalities aboard, and it had impact across the world. So this it's just a simple list of the nationalities of passengers on the ship, her passengers. American, Australian, Austro-Hungarian, Belgian, British, Bulgarian, Canadian, Chinese, Danish, Dutch, Finnish, French, German, Greek, Italian, Irish, Japanese, Mexican, Norwegian, Portuguese, Russian, South African, Spanish, Swedish, Swiss, Syrian, Turkish, Uruguayan. I'm going to read the title poem, Impact. One passenger believed it was her husband, the ship's jolt just another expression of their love. Others thought it was an earthquake or a mishap in the galley, a runaway trolley, a stack of fallen dishes. The baker wasn't sure what happened, though he hoped his loaves would not fall. While airtight after airtight compartment filled, a second-class passenger ordered his drink with chunks from the berg, and a small child sucked pieces of ice as if they were candies, her brothers scraping up snowballs, their mother worried only that they could lose an eye. Oh. Thank you. You don't have to clap, though. Because when you don't clap for people after me, they'll feel really bad. This is called Edith Evans. A fortune teller once told Edith Evans, beware of the water. For years she walked with her head down, convinced that if she didn't, she'd someday step into a puddle, ruin a new pair of shoes. When the last lifeboat left without her, the deck all of a sudden filled with men, she reached down to her ankles, undid the laces, threw her shoes into the darkness, and waited for the splash. A lot of people know about the band playing on the decks of the Titanic. There were actually two bands, and a lot of people think that the last song was Nearer My God to Thee, which is actually not the case. It was a hymn called Autumn. But I'd never really thought about the piano player, because all the bands had piano players, but of course you couldn't bring a piano player onto deck, and you couldn't just randomly have this, piano as the ship started to slant. It doesn't work on many levels, but I'd never really found out what happened to him. So this is about the piano player. Unlike his musician compatriots, whose instruments could be carried on deck, the ship's piano player could only watch as his bandmates played on. At first, he just swayed to the music, then tapped his feet and hummed, but he couldn't withstand the ache to play along. Even without a sound, his hands slipping from gloves, his cold fingers tickling the air, ghost style. I think the hardest part for this book was to try to come up with a section for the actual sinking of the ship. And what I decided to do was I sort of took interviews and video clips from actual survivors, and I made found poems. So that section of the book is called Voices, and this is a short found poem based on the words of Second Officer Charles Lightoller. What I remember that night, what I will remember as long as I live, is the people crying out to each other as the stern began to plunge down. I heard people crying, "I love you." Okay, I'll do two more. So in Belfast, people would work on the ships, and the ships were so big, and there was three ships. There was the Olympic, the Titanic, and another sister ship that was supposed to be called the Gigantic, which they changed the name to Britannic after the tragedy because of obvious reasons. But it took a long time to build these ships, and many of the workers would they'd be working 6 days a week, sometimes 10, 12, 14-hour days to get overtime, and that was their life's work. So it had a devastating effect on the community. So this is one about the carver. His wife remarked he developed a carver's tic, where he'd gently blow on everything he cared for, as if fine sawdust impeded his view, be it of her bedtime body or his daughter's forehead. As a child, he whittled away at sticks, non-stop it seemed, so that his mother teased whenever she needed to find him. She just followed the trail of fresh wood shavings. His father nicknamed him the termite, and his sisters chastised for all the wooden bits they found in their petticoats and frilly dresses. When he grew up a master carver, it seemed a perfect fit, like the way Cinderella's elegant foot found a matching slipper, only this time made of wood. During his years at Harland and Wolff, he dreamed in the curlicues and elaborate patterns handcrafted into the oak panels and staircases that made first class. The day he learned of the sinking, he felt an ache not only in his heart, but in his fingers and in his lips, as he blew away at the non-existent sawdust and cried. Okay, and my final poem is based in Halifax. I was born in Halifax, and this is sort of my Titanic routes, I suppose, started. I didn't realize there were so many boats that went out to retrieve bodies, and they have 3 cemeteries in Halifax that have casualties based in them. One of the ships called the it was a cable ship. So a cable ship, McKay Bennett, the sailors went out there and they would retrieve bodies, but they would also kind of grab any wreck wood or anything, any wreckage that they could, and they would make things out of it. So there's a long maritime tradition of taking things that you would find from a naval disaster and making kind of commemorative things out of it that had function value, but also memorializes it. And this is about a rolling pin that is at the Halifax Maritime Museum. Salvaged from a block of wood, a banister perhaps, or something first class, found floating amongst the bodies. 3rd engineer J.A. O'Brien sanded it smooth as a newborn baby, so sometimes his wife would cradle or press it to her face. Although no one would dare mention it, while watching her from behind, it seemed as if she were rowing, her arms muscling over the dough, her pie crust heavenly, light as air. Thank you.